Hi everyone, Steve Patterson here from Photoshop Essentials. In this video, I show you how to draw custom shapes in Photoshop. There are two ways to draw custom shapes. One is with the Custom Shape tool, and the other is with the Shapes panel. And this video covers both. And while Photoshop includes hundreds of shapes to choose from, most of them are hidden by default. So along with showing you how to draw shapes, I'll also show you where to find all of the shapes that are missing. And once we've learned how to draw one shape at a time, I'll show you how to combine and merge two shapes together, and how to save the result as a new custom preset. Now, Adobe has made lots of changes to shapes in recent versions of Photoshop. So to follow along, you'll want to be using Photoshop 2022 or later. Let's get started. I'll start by creating a new document. On the home screen, I'll click the New File button. Then I'll go with the default Photoshop size, and I'll click Create. And if you need to expand the size of your canvas, here's an easy way to do it. Select the Crop tool from the toolbar, then press and hold the Alt key on your keyboard or the Option key on a Mac and drag one of the side handles outward. Holding Alt or Option as you drag resizes the canvas from its center. Then do the same thing with the top handle, holding the Alt or Option key as you drag it upward. To accept it, click the check mark in the Options bar. As I mentioned, Photoshop gives us two ways to draw custom shapes. One is with the Custom Shape tool, and the other is with the Shapes panel. Let's start with the more traditional way of drawing shapes using the Custom Shape tool. You'll find it in the toolbar nested in with the Rectangle tool and Photoshop's other shape tools. Click and hold on whichever shape tool you used last and choose the Custom Shape tool from the menu. Then go up to the Options bar and choose a shape by clicking the current shape's thumbnail. And this opens the Custom Shape Picker, showing all the shapes we can choose from. And the shapes are divided into groups. But by default, only 4 groups are listed. I'll show you where to find all of the missing shapes once we've learned how the Custom Shape tool works. Twirl open a group by clicking the arrow next to its folder icon. Then choose a shape by clicking its thumbnail. I'll choose the lion shape. Press Enter or Return on a Mac to close the shape picker. Make sure the tool mode is set to Shape, not Path or Pixels. Then choose a color by clicking the Fill color swatch. Use the icons along the top of the panel to choose either no color for the shape, or a solid color preset, a gradient preset, or a pattern preset. If you choose one of these preset options, select a preset from one of the groups. Or to choose your own color, click the icon in the upper right. And this opens the color picker. I'll go with the shade of purple by setting the hue to 295. Then I'll press the Tab key on my keyboard to jump down to the saturation, and I'll set it to 70. I'll press the Tab key again, and I'll set the brightness also to 70. Then I'll click OK to close the color picker. By default, Photoshop adds a 1-pixel black stroke around shapes. To choose a different color or to turn off the stroke, click the color swatch. Then choose from the same options we had for the fill color. Choose no color to turn off the stroke, or choose a solid color preset, a gradient preset, or a pattern preset. Or choose your own color by clicking the icon on the right. And this again opens the color picker, but I'll leave the stroke set to black. Enter a size for the stroke. I'll set it to 10 pixels. Then I'll press Enter or Return on a Mac to accept it. If you click the Stroke Options box, you'll find more options you can set. You can change the stroke type from a solid line to a dashed or dotted line. You can change the alignment to either inside the edge, centered on the edge, or outside the edge of the shape. The default is centered. And you can change the cap type or corner type. The More Options box gives you access to the same options, but you also get the option to create your own custom dashed line. I don't need to do that, so I'll click Cancel. We'll look at other options in the options bar as we go along. To draw the shape, click to set a starting point. Keep your mouse button held down and drag away from that point. As you drag, all you will see is the shape's path outline. By default, Photoshop lets us draw the shape with the aspect ratio unlocked, which can make it look warped. So to draw it at the correct aspect ratio, press and hold the Shift key on your keyboard as you drag. You can reposition the shape as you draw it by holding the space bar on your keyboard. With the space bar down, drag the shape to move it. Then release the space bar to continue drawing. Release your mouse button to complete the shape, and the fill and stroke appear. Photoshop automatically adds a transform box around the shape so we can resize or rotate it. To resize it, click and drag any of the handles. But again, it will resize with the aspect ratio unlocked. So hold the Shift key as you drag to keep the original aspect ratio in place. You can rotate the shape by clicking and dragging just outside one of the handles. And if you hold the Shift key as you drag, you'll rotate the shape in 15-degree increments. To accept it and close the transform box, press Enter or Return on a Mac. In the Layers panel, we see that Photoshop placed the shape on its own shape layer. And because I chose the lion shape, Photoshop named the layer Lion 1. Even though we've already drawn the shape, we can always go back and edit the fill and stroke as long as the shape layer is selected in the Layers panel. And there's a few places to do it. You can go back to the options bar and use the same options we looked at before drawing the shape. Or you can use the options in the Properties panel. For example, I don't really want the stroke around my shape, so to remove it, I'll click the Stroke Color Swatch, and I'll choose the No Color option. All of these options are the same as what you'd find in the options bar. Along with the Fill and Stroke options, you can use the Transform section of the Properties panel to enter a specific width or height for the shape. Just make sure the link icon is selected before entering a value to keep the original aspect ratio. I'll change the width to 800 pixels. Then I'll press Enter or Return on a Mac to accept it. And because the width and height were linked together, Photoshop automatically changed the height. You can change the orientation of the shape by clicking the Flip Horizontal or Flip Vertical options. And you can enter a specific rotation value. Or click the arrow to choose from a list of preset angles. I'll reset it back to 0. To bring back the transform box around the shape, choose the Path Selection tool in the toolbar, located directly above the Shape tools. The transform box should appear automatically, but if it doesn't, just click on the shape to select it. Then you can hold Shift and drag a handle to resize it, or drag outside a handle to rotate it. And you can click and drag the shape to reposition it. When you're done, press Enter or Return on a Mac to accept it. If you want to center your shape on the canvas, here's an easy way to do it. Click on the shape with the Path Selection tool so that not only is the transform box visible, but so is the path outline around the shape. Then in the options bar, click the Path Alignment icon and change the Align To option from Selection to Canvas. As soon as you choose Canvas, the Align options along the top become available. Click the Align Horizontal Centers icon and then Align Vertical Centers. Press Enter or Return on a Mac to close the panel, and then press Enter or Return again to close the transform box, and the shape is now centered. Finally, to delete a shape, make sure the shape layer is selected in the Layers panel and press the Delete key on your keyboard, or drag the shape layer down onto the trash bin. And that's the basics of how to draw shapes using the Custom Shape tool. But the most recent versions of Photoshop, beginning with Photoshop 2020, now include a dedicated Shapes panel. And the Shapes panel has a few advantages over the Custom Shape tool. Not only does the Shapes panel hold all of our custom shapes, but it also gives us a faster way to add those shapes to the document. And the Shapes panel is where we load the hundreds of missing shapes that are included with Photoshop, which we'll do next. Now, the Shapes panel is not part of Photoshop's default workspace, so to open it, go up to the Window menu in the menu bar and choose Shapes. The Shapes panel opens in the Secondary Panel column to the left of the main panels, and you can show or hide a panel in this column by clicking its icon. The Shapes panel holds the same default shapes that we saw earlier in the Custom Shape Picker, and you can twirl any group open to view the shapes inside it. By default, the Shapes panel displays the shapes as large thumbnails, which take up a lot of room. To view smaller thumbnails, click the panel's menu icon and choose Small Thumbnail. Above the groups is the Recents bar, giving you quick access to your recently used shapes. You can turn the bar off if you don't use it by clicking the menu icon and choosing Show Recents. Reselect it from here if you want to turn it back on. To load all of the missing shapes that are included with Photoshop, click the Shapes panel menu icon and choose Legacy Shapes and More. A new Legacy Shapes and More group appears below the default groups, and if you twirl the group open, you'll find two more groups inside it, 2019 Shapes and All Legacy Default Shapes. 2019 Shapes holds hundreds of new custom shapes that were added in Photoshop 2020. I'll click and drag the bottom of the Shapes panel downward to expand it. And now we can view more groups at once. And the All Legacy Default Shapes group holds the classic shapes from earlier versions of Photoshop. Once the missing shapes have been loaded in the Shapes panel, then the next time you're using the Custom Shape tool, all of the shapes will be available in the Options bar. So the Shapes panel holds our custom shapes, but it also lets us add shapes to our document without needing to use the Custom Shape tool. First, choose the shape you want to draw. I'll open 2019 Shapes, and then I'll scroll down to the Playing Cards group so I can choose the heart shape. But before I do, I'll switch back to the large thumbnails to make things easier to see. To add a shape, just click and drag it from the Shapes panel and drop it onto the canvas. And Photoshop instantly draws the shape, and it draws it at the correct aspect ratio. In my case, the shape was filled with purple and given a 10-pixel black stroke because those were the settings I chose earlier in the Options bar when we were using the Custom Shape tool. To resize the shape, click and drag any of the transform handles. When you add a shape from the Shapes panel, there's no need to hold the Shift key as you drag because the aspect ratio is locked automatically. Holding Shift will unlock the aspect ratio if you want to resize it freely, but you can hold the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac to resize the shape from its center. You can rotate the shape by dragging just outside one of the handles. Hold the Shift key as you drag to rotate it in 15-degree increments. And you can click and drag the shape itself to reposition it. I'll move mine into the center. Click the check mark in the Options bar to accept it and close the Transform box. In the Layers panel, we again see that the shape was added on its own shape layer. And because I chose the heart shape, Photoshop named it Hearts 1. Now, just like we saw with the Custom Shape tool, you can edit the shape's fill and stroke after you draw it. And the easiest way to change the fill color is to double-click on the shape's thumbnail. And then you can choose a new color from the color picker. I'll go with red this time by setting the hue to 0, the saturation to 80, and the brightness also to 80. Then I'll click OK to close the color picker. Or if the shape layer is selected, you can change the fill and stroke from the Properties panel. I'll click the Fill Color Swatch, and again we have the same options that we saw earlier. You can choose No Color, a Solid Color preset, a Gradient preset, or a Pattern preset. Or click the icon in the upper right to choose a color from the color picker. You can do the same thing with the stroke. I'll turn off the stroke by clicking the color swatch and then clicking the No Color option. You can change the stroke size or change its type from a solid to a dashed or dotted line. And you can change the stroke's alignment, the cap type, and the corner type, all from the Properties panel. And another way to choose a new fill color for the shape is from the Swatches, Gradients, or Patterns panel. The Swatches panel holds all of Photoshop's color presets. The Gradients panel holds the gradient presets, and the Patterns panel holds the pattern presets. All three panels are grouped together next to the color panel. Now, if your shape layer is active in the Layers panel, you can fill the shape with any of these presets just by clicking on one to select it. I'll open the Swatches panel and I'll click on one of the presets. And because my shape layer is active, the shape changes to the new color. But what if your shape layer is not active? I'll click on the background layer to select it and deselect the shape layer. In that case, you can click and drag a preset from one of the panels directly onto the shape. I'll open the Gradients panel, then I'll twirl open one of the groups, and I'll drag a gradient directly onto the shape. And the shape is instantly filled with the gradient. We can see in the Layers panel that Photoshop automatically selected the shape layer when I dropped the gradient onto it. But what happens when we start adding more shapes to the document from the Shapes panel? Well, by default, Photoshop places each new shape on its own layer. And normally, new layers are added above the currently selected layer. But when we drag and drop shapes from the Shapes panel, where the new layer ends up in the stacking order depends on what we drop the shape onto in the document. And the fill and stroke of the new shape also depend on where we drop it. That may sound confusing, so let me show you what I mean. At the moment, I have my shape layer selected. If I drag another heart shape from the Shapes panel, and drop it onto an area where the white background is showing, then even though my shape layer was active, Photoshop adds the new shape below the original shape and directly above the background layer. That's because I dropped the shape onto the background. And instead of filling the new shape with the same gradient as the original shape, Photoshop instead used the purple fill and 10-pixel black stroke that I chose earlier in the options bar. I'll accept it by clicking the check mark. But if I drag out another shape and I drop it directly onto the original shape, this time Photoshop adds the new shape layer directly above the original shape layer. So whichever layer you drag the shape onto, Photoshop will place the new shape directly above it. And not only does the new shape appear in front of the original shape, but it also takes on the same gradient fill as the original, with no stroke around it. I'll click the check mark to accept it. So just remember that if you want your new shape to share the same fill and stroke as an existing shape, make sure to drop the new shape directly onto the existing shape. Otherwise, you'll get the fill and stroke that were set in the options bar. And to see what those fill and stroke settings were, select the background layer in the Layers panel or any layer other than a shape layer. Then with the Custom Shape tool selected, you'll see your default fill and stroke settings in the options bar. I'll hide my Shapes panel for the moment by clicking its icon. You can copy and paste the fill and stroke from one shape onto another. So if I want the shape on the right to share the same gradient fill and no stroke as the other two shapes, I can right-click or control-click on a Mac on one of the shape layers that has the settings I need and choose Copy Shape Attributes. Then I'll right-click or control-click on the shape where I want to paste them and choose Paste Shape Attributes. And now all three shapes share the same fill and stroke. Now, once you start adding multiple shapes to your document, selecting them from the Layers panel can become a hassle. A faster way is to select shapes just by clicking on them with the Path Selection tool. I'll choose it from the toolbar. Then in the Options bar, make sure the Select option is set to All Layers, not Active Layers. And now you can click on any shape to select it. To select multiple shapes, hold the Shift key and click on them. We can tell which shapes are selected by the path outlines around them and by the transform box surrounding both shapes together. The Layers panel also shows the selected shapes. With multiple shapes active, any changes you make to the shape properties will affect all selected shapes at once. For example, in the Properties panel, I'll click on the Fill Color Swatch. Then I'll switch from a gradient preset to a solid color preset. And I'll choose one of these blue swatches. And the change affects both selected shapes. I'll click the Stroke Color Swatch and choose black. And now the stroke appears around both shapes. And if I change the stroke's alignment to outside, or I switch from a solid line to a dotted line, again we see the changes around both shapes. I'll turn the stroke back off. But if you need to change any of the options in the Transform section of the Properties panel, like the width and height of the shapes, you'll want to do that to each shape individually. And here's why. If I change the width to something like 400 pixels, Photoshop sets the combined width of both shapes to 400 pixels, rather than setting each one separately. So I'll undo that by pressing Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on a Mac. And then I'll press Enter or Return to close the transform box. This time, I'll click the shape on the left to select it, and I'll change its width to 400 pixels. Then I'll do the same thing with the shape on the right, setting its width to 400 pixels. And now both shapes are the correct size, and I can click on each one to reposition it on the canvas. But I don't really want the smaller shapes, so to delete multiple shapes at once, hold Shift and click on each shape to select it, and then press the Delete key on your keyboard. So far, we've been drawing shapes on their own separate layers, but we can also add a shape to an existing shape layer. I'll scroll down to the Insects group, which is inside the 2019 shapes, so I can draw the butterfly. Now, if I just drag the butterfly from the Shapes panel and drop it onto my existing shape, the new shape is added on its own layer, which is not what I want. So I'll delete that by dragging the layer onto the trash bin. To add a new shape to an existing shape layer, hold the Shift key on your keyboard, and then drag and drop the new shape onto the existing shape. And this time, the shapes are combined on the same layer. Now, all shapes on the same layer share the same fill and stroke. I'll drag the butterfly into the upper right, and then I'll click the check mark to accept it, so we can see that the gradient actually starts from the left side of the heart and extends all the way to the right of the butterfly, as if they were one larger shape. Now, my gradient is running horizontally from left to right, but I actually want it to run vertically from the bottom to the top. So to change the gradient settings, I'll double-click on the shape's thumbnail. And this opens the Gradient Fill dialog box. I'll change the angle from 0 to 90 degrees, and then I'll click OK. And now the gradient runs from the bottom of the heart to the top of the butterfly. If I add a stroke to the shapes, again the stroke appears as if they were one larger shape. I'll reselect my shape layer, and then I'll turn the stroke back off. Even though the shapes are on the same layer, you can still select them individually with the Path Selection tool. If I click on the heart shape, I select just the heart. And if I click on the butterfly, I select just the butterfly. And you can still resize the selected shape or rotate the shape without affecting the other. You can also move the shapes separately. I'll drag the butterfly into the center, and then I'll make it a bit smaller. Now, the reason I did that is because I want to subtract the butterfly shape from the heart shape. In other words, I want to use one shape to cut a hole through the other. But before I do that, I need to make sure that the butterfly is aligned perfectly in the center. So with the butterfly shape already selected, I'll hold Shift and I'll click on the heart to add it to the selection. Then in the Options bar, I'll click the Path Alignment icon and I'll choose Align Horizontal Centers. I could also choose Align Vertical Centers, but that actually moves the butterfly too far down. So I'll undo that by pressing Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on a Mac. To subtract the butterfly from the heart, I need to have only the butterfly selected. So I'll hold Shift and I'll click on the heart shape to deselect it. Then back in the Options bar, I'll click the Path Operations icon and I'll choose Subtract Front Shape. I'll press Enter or Return on a Mac to accept it, and the butterfly has been subtracted. It may look like we have a white butterfly, but that's only because we're seeing the background behind it. I'll turn off the background layer by clicking its visibility icon, and now we see the checkerboard pattern, which is how Photoshop represents transparency. The only problem is we still have two separate shapes. It's just that one is being subtracted from the other. If I click on the shape and drag it off to the side, the heart moves, but the butterfly does not. I'll press Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on a Mac to undo that. And if I resize the shape, the heart resizes, but the butterfly does not. But you can fix that by merging the two shapes into a single shape. First, drag around the shapes with the Path Selection tool to select them both. Then click the Path Operations icon and choose Merge Shape Components. Photoshop will warn you that merging the shapes will turn your live shape into a regular path, and that means you won't be able to edit the shapes individually once you merge them. But if you're okay with that, click Yes to accept it. And now that they've been merged into a single shape, I can drag it off to the side and everything moves together. Now, you won't be able to edit the shape from the Properties panel after the shapes are merged, but you'll still have access to the same options in the Options bar. I'll click the Stroke Color Swatch and set it to black. And I'll lower the size down to 4 pixels. Then I'll press Enter or Return to accept it. And notice that the stroke appears not only around the outside of the shape, but also around the inside. And that's because we're working with a single shape. You can enter a specific width or height for the shape in the Options bar, but make sure the link icon is selected to keep the correct aspect ratio. Or you can resize it by going up to the Edit menu and choosing either Free Transform, like it says here, or it may say Free Transform Path. They're both the same command. Then you can drag a handle to resize it, or hold the Alt or Option key on a Mac to resize the shape from its center. You can click and drag the shape into place, and then click the check mark to accept it. And I'll just quickly turn the stroke back off. Finally, here's how to save your merged shape as a new preset so you can use it again without needing to redraw it. I'll reopen the Shapes panel by clicking its icon, and then I'll close the Legacy Shapes and More group, and I'll resize the panel to make it smaller. First, if you haven't done so already, create a new shape group to hold your custom presets. We want the group to appear below the others, so click on the bottom group to select it. Then click the New Group icon. Give the group a name. I'll name it My Shapes, and click OK. And the new group appears. If you already have a group to hold your shapes, make sure the group is selected because we want the new preset to be placed inside it. Next, select the shape by clicking on it with the Path Selection tool, and then go up to the Edit menu and choose Define Custom Shape. Give the shape a name. I'll name it Heart with Butterfly, and then click OK. And back in the Shapes panel, the shape appears as a new custom preset. And there we have it. That's everything you need to know to draw custom shapes using the Custom Shape tool and the Shapes panel in Photoshop. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to my channel to learn more about Photoshop. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Steve Patterson from Photoshop Essentials.